Welcome to the Slut Next Door podcast, where we dive deep into desire, unravel kinks and fetishes, and explore the deliciously naughty side of self-discovery. I'm Beatrix Vale, an erotic audio creator, and your guide to all things kinky and curious. So let's begin. Today's episode actually comes from a suggestion that I received from one of you. I'm going to answer the question that I have received many times before. How did I end up here? How did eroticism become my work, my craft, my calling? And maybe more importantly is, how did I find the courage to choose it? So this really isn't a dramatic origin story, and there's not going to be like a single, light bulb moment. It was a series of small realizations, and I would say a series of honest conversations with myself, a slow uncovering of parts of me that I think have always been there, but were not fully expressed. So this path for me was unexpected. It was very intimate and uncomfortable at times. However, I think the most important piece of it all is that it is, and I think will always be, deeply empowering. So today I'm going to walk you through how it unfolded. And if this is your first time listening to me, I create erotic audio hypnosis files. And I also come from a phone sex operator origin. That's where I was before I created the hypno. And way before then, I also had very normal jobs. And right now, hypnosis is my job. So I'm going to walk you through how I got here, the logistics of it, but also the internal shifts and really identity changes, the doubts and the bravery and the freedom. And I like to call this is the story of how I found my voice and how I chose to trust it. Now, before I get into the episode, I like to have a little segment called What's Making Me Feel Like a Goddess Currently. And lately, actually just this morning, I started studying the wild woman archetype. And if you've never heard of this, it doesn't mean, wild woman doesn't mean like chaotic and reckless. Wild is more instinctual and untamed. The wild woman archetype is deeply rooted in her own body and her own knowing. So keep in mind that for women, it's a very interesting journey because even in our modern day, 2026, women are still expected to be certain ways. We still live in this patriarchal type of world and expectations. So a lot of things about women are pushed down and forgotten. And I think it's getting better. I do. I think it's definitely better than it was, say, even before I was born. But in particular with the wild woman archetype, it just feels like super aligned for me right now. And it's because when we think about a woman can be sensual and intelligent. A woman can be soft and powerful. A woman can be erotic and sacred at the same time. And all of these things she does not have to apologize for or piece them out, anything. It's just who she is. Like this morning, I was reading about the siren, way back when there were these stories of sirens of the ocean, like mermaid type women, and they were beautiful. They were always portrayed as very youthful, just stunning, gorgeous, very erotic. However, the stories would say that men would fall into their trap and then she would pull them down into the depths of the ocean where that man would die. So that's to say that this gorgeous woman, her beauty is dangerous. And that's kind of, you can find that all over the place in origin stories, like ancient stories. And it's kind of not fair. But anyway, so back to the wild woman archetype, why it's making me feel like a goddess. It makes me feel special in a way that's so hard for me to describe. It just makes me feel connected. Like it gives a term or a word to what I do all the time, which is stepping into something a little ancient, but very, very real. Like, I love to think that there's this lineage of women who own their desire, their voice, their intuition, and I get to tap into that, thankfully, every day. And I love that. It does make me feel like a goddess. And so studying this archetype just reminds me that being a goddess is never really about full-on domination and aesthetics. It's really about embodiment, like embodying the goddess that is inside of me and that has been there even like way before me. And you actually might see this in the episode that, my sexuality, for years I thought it was different. Like there was something wrong with me, mainly that it was just different. But looking at this wild woman archetype kind of shows me it's really not accidental. It's not this different thing that I have inside of me. I can say that it's really just an expression of something a lot older than me and deeper. So that's what's making me feel like a goddess this week. Let's go into my story. Let's go into how I arrived here as a creator of erotic hypnosis audio files. So it all begins, I like to say it begins with phone sex, but really it begins with selling my used panties. And you may have heard this origin story many times, but I can't help but bring it up because it is important to give the history of how I'm here. So I've had side hustles forever. I feel like ever since I've been an adult. I always just needed a side hustle to make more money. And so I was doing DoorDash and I hated it. I so hated it. And maybe that's why I do a podcast now, because I was just thinking when I did do DoorDash, I listened to so many podcasts because they really make the time go by a lot quicker. But anyway, so yeah, I looked online looking for side hustles ideas so I could stop doing DoorDash on the side. And I found this article about women selling their used panties. And I was like, what in the world? That sounds super interesting. So I decided to go for it. And it kind of opened my eyes to the world of online sex work, because it really wasn't only about the panties. It was, and I didn't realize this going into it. It was also about like offering sexting and phone sex and even audios. My first audio is actually pretty funny. One that I got requested to do through this site. And so anyway, so that's where I got started technically. And before I get into more of it, I kind of want to touch on where I was in my life at that time as well, because I think that's really important. So I was a few years post a divorce, and in that marriage, we had what people call a dead bedroom. A dead bedroom is where sex is not happening. And at that time, I had, well, I would say for most of my adult life, I put a lot of weight into my sexuality. I put a lot of value into it. It was something that was always there. For a very long time, I didn't have words for it. I just knew that I liked it and I liked exploring. I just liked having sex, I guess. And so anyways, I, was in this marriage, and I was getting rejected in the bedroom time and time again. And it was confusing. It was frustrating. It did a lot to my self-esteem, because it was just, I feel like it was just time and time again, I would try to initiate sex and I would be told no. And, at that time, I remember thinking that just something was wrong with me. It definitely affected whether or not I thought I was sexy or not, because your mind can't help but go there like, oh, well, there must be something wrong with me. Like, do I smell? Am I not sexy? Am I, all kinds of things go through your head. And then there was also this level of, because we would attempt to talk about it. That's a whole nother story. But there was really no conversation happening. There was no honesty happening from his side. And, so I was left in the dark about that. And I was also, he kind of made me feel like I was just some crazy sex crazed maniac. Like, why do I put so much stock into whether or not he'll have sex with me? So there was that line of conversation that was happening where I thought something was wrong with me in that regard. Like I was some nymphomaniac. Like he had made me believe that, but I know for a fact that I'm not a nymphomaniac. I'm just a sexual person. So anyway, so after that divorce, I was in a place where I really had no idea who I was. If you've gone through a breakup of a long-term relationship or a divorce, I think a lot of times you leave it thinking like, well, who the hell am I? Because I have no idea. I've spent years, identifying who I was with this other person. So I had no idea who I was. I had super low self-esteem at that point. But when I got out of that marriage, I did make a decision to find myself and my sexual self. I was like, screw that. I'm not putting that side of me away. And so I dived in hard to discovering myself through kink, through BDSM, really just owning my sexuality. It was this sexual awakening that was really beautiful time for me. So, that's important for the history of this, because I think if I wasn't within that time of my life, maybe I wouldn't have had the balls to do what I did. Because in my personal life, I was doing all these kinky things. So when I did the side hustle, it just made sense. Like, you know, oh, well, I can monetize being kinky. Well, hell yeah. Like, I already do it for free, right? Like, I'm already doing this in my regular life. So, yeah, let's do it. So then that led me to discovering the world of online sex work that I had no idea this stuff existed. It led me to phone sex, because I kind of realized, wow, I really like doing the phone sex. I really like interacting with men. I like using my voice, and I felt just super empowered, through the selling of the panties, the phone, the sex, the sexting, all the things I was doing. I had never felt so empowered in my whole life. I mean, I truly felt like this depth of sexual goddess territory. And on top of that, I was super aroused as well. And so that became addicting. I wanted just more and more. And it didn't feel like work. It felt like something I loved doing. And I remember at that time too, it felt like this little naughty secret, because I'm the type of person that my sexuality, even though I've spent a lot of my life being this sexual beast, it's not something that people know about. It just isn't. Like, even some of my good friends that I've had throughout my life have no idea how kinky or sexual I am. It's always kind of been like a little secret. And this felt like the same way. Like, this was my little secret side hustle. Um, but when I think back to the phone sex, I do remember, because I had like talked dirty, of course, in my own sexual adventures. But when you're doing full on phone sex, there's a lot of depth involved. I think maybe people think, oh, well, phone sex, you just get on the phone and you just moan and touch yourself. Like, not at all. I never, and I think that's also a femdom thing. Like, I never was touching myself. I was never doing role plays where someone's like, quote, having sex with me, through phone sex. It was very mental. I was feeling challenged in a great way, like in the best way, to use my words and psychology even to make someone climax without them having visuals. Like, I felt like there was this art form to phone sex. I know that sounds corny, but there really is. And I loved the depth that was involved with phone sex. And I truly, truly had no clue. I had no clue I had a sexy voice. No idea until I started doing phone sex and heard it over and over again. And I was like, okay, I guess I believe you. But, I really don't think that having a good voice, I don't think it is that great without having somewhat of sexual intelligence and being able to tap into emotions. because I could just sit there and talk monotone. And while you could say, oh, you have a great voice, it's not going to be that great because I don't have any emotion behind it. I'm not using the right words, you know. So yeah, while I do get that I have a nice voice, it's nothing without the depth that's involved. When I call it sexual intelligence, I'm sure there's a better term for that. But so yeah, I also, looking back at that time of doing phone sex, I remember thinking like how surprising it was that I would say, I don't know, I don't want to put a number to it, but um, let's say a quarter of the calls that I would take weren't even typical sexy type of phone sex. I would say that a quarter, roughly, were just men that wanted to be heard or men that wanted to connect on a deeper level, and it had nothing to do with getting off. And that was a very interesting piece to me and something that kept me interested in it because I did feel like I was helping people. And helping people has always been a common denominator in jobs I've chosen. I take a lot of joy in helping other people. And I remember quickly learning that doing phone sex was also kind of like, in a way, role playing or cosplaying as a therapist. There, there is definitely, like, I can distinctly remember it was like probably one of the first 5 calls I ever took on Night Flirt, and it was a guy where I think he spent an hour just confessing things to me, talking about his past and his kinks, and I mean, maybe he was masturbating, but it was just like talking, and I didn't even have to really talk. I just listened, and that was like eye opening to me, and something that drew me to phone sex as well because I've always had like I actually used to want to be a therapist. It was actually one of my first technically my first major in college is I chose psychology. I changed it, but I've always been drawn to psychology. So phone sex just really fit well for me, especially the way that I did it. Um, and I also learned or realized as an adult that I have a kink for bringing men pleasure. So back when I identified with being submissive myself, that was the core of my submissive nature. I I knew that I wanted to bring a man pleasure, and during that time that was being submissive and doing whatever my dom wanted, right? But around this time of my life, during the phone sex era, I was absolutely done submitting. Like, I didn't wanna submit to another man because I think my divorce had a lot to do with that woman gaining, um, her empowerment, that side of me. Um, but yeah, I was super done with submitting to men, but the need inside me to make men feel satisfied, like, sexually, absolutely still lived inside of my femdom-centered phone sex. Um, so I was feeling this personal satisfaction of bringing other men satisfaction, even though, I was the one in charge and everything, and I still feel that way. I It makes me feel so fulfilled to to make men come, to be honest. It's just something inside of me that just feels good. And that is something I think that speaks to my history of being, submissive, and also as the dominant goddess that I am, I still find so much pleasure, personally, in bringing men pleasure. So now let's talk about the shift into hypnosis. So I remember when I was on Night Flirt, which is a phone sex platform, I remember seeing other phone sex operators selling or offering hypnosis themed phone calls. And I remember seeing audios. And I remember thinking like, ooh, how taboo, how dangerous. It was just like very sexy to me. And I was intrigued. So that led me to learning, soaking up all the information I could on hypnosis. And, the the fucking of the mind is what drew me to femdom, like personally. I love anything that has to do like with mental mind fucks or getting inside someone's head. I've always been interested in the mind and psychology. So, the erotic hypnosis felt like a super logical step for me. And I was also very attracted to guiding someone with my voice, and also super attracted to the idea of turning someone blank. I mean, it still is very, very hot to me. So, I just went for it. I wanted it, and I got it. And that took a lot of hard work. It took a lot. Like, I'm not gonna lie, when I was doing phone sex and I was doing it full time, any free time that I had was spent developing this craft. When I wasn't on the phone with someone, I was learning, I was practicing, I was soaking in everything I could, but I was quote unquote working probably all waking day pretty much. I mean, just I was taking in so much. And that's the interesting part is when you like what you do, it doesn't feel like work most of the time. And it still doesn't. I love coming to my computer still to this day because it doesn't feel like work. I'm never like, oh, I gotta go sit down and be a goddess. Oh my God. Like, no, this feels super aligned in what I'm supposed to do. But anyway, yeah, there was a time where I was just, I was doing all the things, all the things. And so fast forward to doing my first hypnophile. I remember hearing it back, like as in I edited it and listened to it myself. I really did feel like I was doing something I was meant to do. I remember being so scared to push out that first hypnophile. I was terrified. There's definitely that moment where you have that imposter syndrome thing where, I knew I had learned everything I could. I knew I had written a pretty good script. I knew that it sounded okay, but you push it out and you're like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Like, people are going to hate this. It's just that internal voice that for some reason is there to make us feel like we're a piece of shit. But however, on the other side, when I heard what I created, it did feel like I was doing something I was meant to do because I heard and I also felt the power in my voice. So there was a little confidence there, yes, because it does take bravery and confidence to I think put any piece of content out there, um, not just like erotic hypnosis, but I would imagine that's what content creators feel like, or artists. It's terrifying to put something out there, even though you do believe deep down inside that it's something good. Um, so yeah, so that's, I would say with hypnosis, it's something I wanted, and I made that shit happen because I wanted it. I was attracted to it. I thought it was super neat. I thought it was exciting, and I just went for it. Um, and the same thing with the phone sex. I I wanted it. It was fun. It was sexy, and I went for it. So with that, I'm going to talk about the courage and the freedom to really own this, because I feel like I've talked about the really fun things. So let's talk about the like real life things, because there's not very many people um, that would hear what I do for work and not have some kind of judgment. And that it's still in my head. It's still a quiet thing there. It's more quiet now, but uh, I was ashamed. Like when I thought about, okay, well, I'm gonna do this full time. I'm gonna take it on. Even when I was doing it part time, I had this thought too. There was this feeling of being ashamed to what my friends and family would think. But for me, the pros outweighed the cons for me. And I do recognize that takes a lot of bravery. It really does. But I'll talk about some other things, that the pros that did the outweighing. Financial practicality was definitely a driving force for me. I was making more money doing phone sex than I was at my former regular job. So that was a driving force for sure. I loved the aspect of the flexibility and hours. Now, if you go back to my kind of behind the scenes of a content creator, you'll know that I'm not too flexible. Um, but so I'm more talking about the whole 9 to 5, although I still do 9 to 5, but going into an office, being on someone else's schedule, that being my own boss, making my own schedule was super appealing to me. Um, and another piece of it is I love doing what I do. I love this shit. I love it. I was having fun when I first started doing phone sex. I had even more fun doing erotic hypnosis. And, for me in this era of my life, it's important to me. It's important to me to like what I do and that I'm having fun. And I feel so thankful that I've given myself that, because I know there's a lot of people in there that probably don't ever feel that. And, I'm very thankful for that, because I do love what I do. Not, like I said, none of it ever feels like, ugh, I gotta go to work today. Ugh, you know. Um, but there is still a level of shame, because there is a lot of stigma out there with sex work, and there's stigma even with sexuality. There's stigma with women and sexuality. So those things are still there, but I don't know. There comes, there came a time for me where I just thought, you know what? screw that. Because I like what I do. I believe in what I'm doing. What other people would think doesn't matter. But I won't lie, it does kind of matter because there is still shame. I'm getting better though. I've been able to here recently come out, if you will, to people close to me. I've done some really important things. I was at this expo and I was talking to someone for the first time, and I revealed to her, I admitted to her that, yeah, I do erotic work, content creation online. And even a year ago, I would have never admitted that to someone I didn't know because I was fearful of judgment. But, I'm constantly evolving and becoming more strong and more sure in myself. And it feels really good, but it's still there. I mean, it's still, I still, I don't know why. I don't know why I care, but I do. What people think. But I think more than anything on this journey, I truly believed in what I was doing, and that mattered most to me. I wanted the freedom. I wanted to feel comfortable financially. I wanted to feel excited, and I wanted more and more of what felt good. And then, as I have said many times in my podcast, I also think it's very important what I do. And especially in these modern times, I'm happy, thrilled to be a a place that people can escape to, um, because stuff can feel so heavy and so stressful. And so I think that there is value in that. I know that I do work within people's, um, grappling with kink, shame, owning their own desires. I know that I do work within that. And these aspects of it are just like some of the most deep rooted reasons of why I will continue to do what I do, because I do believe that I make a difference. I do believe that for some people I just make their penis feel good, and that's fine. That still brings me joy, but if I can bring even deeper change, oh my God. I mean, I just got this message just maybe it was yesterday, that someone wanted to work on their ability of self-love and just overall love and kind of softening. And he was telling me that, I've gotten somewhere with this. I'm feeling kind of emotional talking about this. And I can't help but wonder if you have had, influence in this, if you've helped me reach a state where whether it is loving himself more or whatever. He didn't go into detail, but it's these types of things that mean more than anything to me, that just bring me so much purpose and so much fulfillment. I can't even put words to it. And so, I'm very, very thankful that I was brave enough to say, well, fuck the shame, fuck the being scared, because there was fear. There was fear. I remember thinking when I made the decision to go full time, I took days to decide that. And I was so scared that I would do this leap, right? And maybe I would be successful for a year, but maybe it would die down after a year, and then I'd have to start all over again in a new career that was there. But it takes a little bit of believing in yourself, as corny as that sounds, to make a leap, believing in what you do, putting value in your own, personal satisfaction that matter. So there you go. That's how I went from, doing phone sex to what I do now, working in eroticism. And it's the most important thing, one of the most important things I've done in my life, and that I never want to stop doing. So, as I think about everything that I've shared today, I think that what stands out to me really is that none of this really happened because I had mapped this out. I didn't really, even when I decided to do phone sex, I had no idea I was going to do erotic hypnosis. This wasn't mapped out. It just kept unfolding because I kept paying attention to what made me feel alive. And sure, there were practical reasons and financial motivations, and there were absolutely risk, and there was fear of what people would think. But underneath all of that, there definitely was a sense of alignment and a feeling of this feels like me. And for me, eroticism wasn't just about sex. It was about my voice, power, psychology, the messy parts of our human brains and desires, intimacy. And, it really, really is about reclaiming parts of myself that had been dimmed. And, once I stopped arguing with that pull, I think that things really started making sense and became just super aligned. And for me, choosing this type of work really was an act of honesty. And it's challenged me. It's stretched me. It's really forced me to grow. And it's given me a sense of purpose I really didn't expect at all from day one. So that is how I got here. And if nothing else, I hope that this episode, me going through my history, was at least entertaining. Maybe you see yourself in my story. And I hope that maybe this episode gives you permission to examine those little pulls that inside of us, because there may be something really, really beautiful it's trying to pull you to. So thank you so much for listening. And if you are new to me, don't forget to check out the link in the episode summary, where you can discover more of my erotic work and listen to the power of my voice. Until next time. And that's a wrap for this episode of The Slut Next Door, where we dive deep into the raw, unapologetic truths of human desire. If you loved what you heard today, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a juicy moment. Want to connect with me outside the podcast? Click the link in my bio, where you can find lots of juicy content and options. Until next time, I'm Beatrix Vale, your slut next door, and I'll see you in the next episode.